This is where it all began, Tahrir Square. Hundreds of thousands of Egyptians took to the streets to push out their longtime ruler, Hosni Mubarak. It was a historic moment that captivated the world and inspired them into believing that anything is possible. And for millions of Egyptians, for the first time in a long time, they believed their lives would be transformed. But the initial optimism is fading away. Reality is setting in. The military still controls the country, and the transition to a democratically elected government is still very uncertain. Millions continue to live in squalor, unable to break free from the poverty trap. Yes, the old regime may be gone, but for millions of Egyptians, their daily lives hasn't changed that much. One thing is for certain, this revolution is far from over. Today we meet with Egyptians from a variety of backgrounds to hear what they have to say about what has changed and what hasn't and what lies ahead. Welcome to Cairo and welcome to the cafe. Joining us in the cafe in Cairo today are Ala Abdel Fattah, a prominent Egyptian blogger and democracy activist who now runs Tweet Nedwa, or seminars that bring together Twitter fans with political leaders in Egypt for face-to-face debates. Sundus Asim, a multimedia journalist and student in Cairo, she supports the Muslim Brotherhood. Mustafa Hussein, a psychiatrist who deals with victims of torture and a well-known Egyptian blogger. Yasmin al-Rashidi, a journalist whose book Tomorrow to Tahrir Again is a diary of the 18-day Egyptian revolution. Nader Labib, also a journalist who covers the Middle East for Japanese television. Marianne Hanna, a Coptic activist who has been organizing dialogue and understanding between Muslims and Christians in Egypt for years. Mahmoud Salim, who revealed himself after Mubarak's ouster to be the blogger behind the website Rantings of a Sand Monkey. His blog is one of the most popular Egyptian blogs outside the country. And Noor Noor, a student at the American University of Cairo. His father is Ayman Noor, who ran in Egypt's presidential elections in 2005 and got nearly 12% of the vote. Thank you very much for joining us here on the cafe. We're looking forward to a very interesting discussion. I want to start off by asking all of you, what has changed for you? When you wake up in the morning, what has changed in your daily lives after the revolution?
My relationship with the country has changed. Sort of engaging with the street, I feel more invested, I feel there's more possibility. At the same time, sort of nothing has changed, and that, the country's, it's the same, sort of the same problems and the same traffic has gotten worse.
Yeah, I feel more optimistic. I feel much better future for my children, actually. I was so worried for my children before the revolution, but now I think they have a better chance than us, than our generation. Our generation didn't have the chance to express themselves or to be what they wanted to be, but I think my children now, I'm optimistic they're going to have a much better future.
But I want to know, in terms of your daily lives, I mean, what's different in your daily life? Do you do anything differently now that you didn't do before the collapse of the regime?
We talk a lot about politics everywhere, everywhere.
So can you feel the freedom a little bit in the country?
Of course, I was born in the 80s, so I belong to the Mubarak generation, and for the very first time the chair is empty. So every day, about every decision you make every day, it's possible. It's endless possibilities.
We're all relatively young here. I want to ask you guys, do you think that you represent a good cross-section of Egyptians? I mean, there are 40 million people that are illiterate. You guys are well-educated, you're well-off. Do you guys represent Egypt?
No, not really. I don't think, probably we do have this similar aspiration and hopes, but definitely this is not a representative sample of Egyptians.
So give me a sense of what it is that Egypt is now talking, if this grouping of people, doesn't do it.
Well, what I can see in the past few months is that more people are interested in political matters and more interested in things that are happening, and they see there's a possibility for changing situations and positions in their own workplace and in their own environment, not just not just in the country, all over. So there's definitely lots of aspirations on the micro level and on the micro level as well.
Okay. Do you trust the military?
No. I mean, the military are the backbone of the regime, the previous regime. They are the regime. I think they made the regime and the regime made them. I think they have deep stakes in the country and they want to maintain on some level a status quo to preserve their interests.
But has the military done a good job so far?
No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, I think, that I think they get a little bit of credit for something that happened during the 18 days, which was securing, some sort of the safety of the people. But no, I mean, I think it's just gotten worse and worse.
Has the military done a good job?
I'm not sure. I mean, only the history will.
Well, I mean, listen, we've seen the militaries in some other Arab countries. We've seen the military in Syria. We've seen the military in Bahrain. We've seen the military
Is that
in
how
Yemen.
low the bar is now?
it's not how low
Should
the
we
bar
just
is.
be happy that our military did not kill our people and therefore be okay with them? Is that what you're saying,
This
Ayman?
shouldn't be the default of the army. And the question is, because you asked whether we trust the army or not. And in politics, it's not a matter of trust.
Right.
It's law. It's a matter of laws and elections and the people voicing their opinions and through elections, through fair elections. The military doctrine doesn't have this fair process.
Okay.
We don't have that.
And the reason why I was asking that, it was because I'm really trying to get a sense that we've seen what other militaries have done. So is there some credit that should be given to the military that they came out early on and issued a certain degree of neutrality?
No one should be given credit for not killing enough people.
Exactly.
That's ridiculous.
For example, if you have a household and a father, for example, does not beat up his children, or only beats him a little bit, or if a father does not kill his children, people don't go and thank the father. I'm sorry, you cannot say we must thank the military for not killing us, because this is their duty, this is their obligation, whether as fellow citizens or whether as an institution that takes its money from the people.
They could have done worse.
Yes.
So that's why we appreciate this transitional to an extent.
It's like saying we appreciate that the police do their job.
No.
You want to give them a
Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
The idea is, are you asking if we trust the military as a military that is defending the country or a military that is ruling the country? I trust the Egyptian army if it is defending our country and doing its job, pure military job. However, I would only trust a democratically elected civilian government to rule the country. And we just have to be patient throughout this stage. It's never going to be perfect.
Do you think the next government of Egypt will appoint a civilian minister of defense, or will it still be a general who runs the Ministry of Defense?
No, it will always be a general.
I don't know. I'm not sure, but I hope it's going to be a civilian, but I'm not sure.
Civilian?
The military will do
always
its
be a
best
general.
to protect its territory.
Yeah, but can you predict? I mean, I don't know.
We don't
it
know,
depends
but-
on how
yeah.
much of a mandate, that government that next government has. It depends on whether we have a presidential system or a parliamentary system. I think because in a parliamentary system the mandate wouldn't be too strong; it would be a coalition government. So I think it's impossible to predict.
Okay, so listen, you wake up. Listen, hold on one second. You tomorrow morning, you wake up. You're the general in charge of the SCAF. What do?
Disbanded.
I mean, listen, it's easy for everyone to criticize it, but I want to ask you honestly, put yourself in the position of the military. You are now responsible for 85 million people.
The SCAF is not it's not the body that is running the military, by the way. The SCAF is a completely weird, invented body that existed. Nobody understands why. What was their mandate prior to the revolution? I mean, they existed prior to the revolution, but it's not clear what their mandate is. There is another body that has the chiefs of, I don't know what you call
staff.
Yeah.
I think the role of the military
you
now
can disband the
should be
SCAF very
limited
easily.
to protecting the democratic transition stage, only to protect the will of the people and to prevent any attempt to change the will of the people or the results of the referendum, and try just to pass through this stage to a civilian
The
system
argument
government.
of the military now, I think it's between the gap between reality and perfection. Yes, yeah. Some people are asking for military council to be perfect, which I think on the ground is not possible. So we should be more realistic,
to stop torture, to stop killing.
We asked them to do their job. They protected the state.
Yeah.
They didn't side with the people. They protected the state. They were patriotic in that sense, protecting the entity of Egypt, not the Egyptian people. It's different. I somehow disagree with you because the Egyptians should protect their own will. If we cannot protect our own will, then we have a big problem.
Absolutely, but who is in charge now?
What I have a problem
They are in
with-
charge.
For
They
a
have
limited period of
they
time.
have a
that's what I
minimum
believe.
responsibility. Absolutely,
Which,
it's
by the
just
way, nobody
temporary.
elected them to charge. To be in charge.
Absolutely. That's why we need to pass through elections.
Stage as
We
soon
need
as
elections.
possible. Exactly. That's the point. We have to
Yeah.
pass this.
It's just temporary.
No, but we need, please, we need to focus because lots of people are saying, okay, we are in a transition phase, so we have to be forgiving of the minor offenses or the atrocities that occur. I know this is not
never
what you're
have to
saying, but I'm
be,
saying this is what
forgiving.
some people are saying. I think during this transitional phase, because we're in a point of our history where we are rebuilding Egypt from scratch, and it is this transitional phase that is setting new foundations for Egypt. If these new foundations are being set upon military justice for civilians and allowing the military certain leeway to commit certain
Marianne,
actions,
you
such
kind
as
of said that a little bit sarcastically. You don't
'Cause,
feel.
he
how do you
said
feel
he-
about the transition process? Is
He
it-
said we're building Egypt from scratch, and I'm not seeing this happening.
Okay,
That's
why not? Why is it
Nothing
not
is.
happening?
I mean, the real laws and regulations and the middle management, what is known as the middle management in Egypt, this hasn't changed.
Okay,
people
well,
are
so-
still
but I
in the
want
same
to ask you, I
position.
mean, let's take this realistically. I mean, it's a few months since the end of the revolution. I want you to tell me what you would have wanted to see
It hasn't
different happen
ended.
so
It
far.
hasn't ended
hasn't
yet.
ended.
We still have a lot
Yeah,
to
that's
do.
fine. Since the end of the first
The
phase of the
uprising.
revolution,
Right.
you know, I know. Listen, and I'll to be honest with you, I know a lot of people tell me this. We've gotten rid of the dictator. We haven't gotten rid of the dictatorship. So tell me, in these months, what would you have done differently?
I would start with the Interior Ministry and changing the laws and the curriculums that the officers study in college. That's very important. I mean, what are the guarantees that we're not going to back to the January 25th days? Nothing has changed.
And you think that's a realistic timeline to be done now with a government that was not elected by people right now? You think this
We should-
Minister of
Well, no,
Interior
you
should do
asked
that?
her what she would do.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm asking.
We
I
need
mean, like,
guarantees.
if we had the Minister of Interior here, he would have said, look, we have gotten rid of some of the old officers.
But that's
We
not
are,
true.
you know,
That's
and listen,
not
it's
true.
true,
That's
not all
not
of them have
true.
been tried. But, you know, I've met with the Minister of Interior. They've given us the statistics on who's been removed. They've given us the new curriculum that they're working on. But these things also need democratic processes, which they don't have. So that's why I'm asking. I mean, is it easy just to be on the
Justice
outside
doesn't need
criticizing?
democratic processes. We already have laws and courts. Okay, if you have
We know how well the
officers
laws
being-
and courts here have done, though. Let's not be.
No,
let's
no,
not
no,
fool
no,
ourselves
no,
with
no,
the
no,
laws
no,
and
no,
courts.
no,
This is a
We
waste
should
of
plan-
energy, waste of
we
effort is to talk about symptoms of the previous regime. We have to treat the disease itself. So if we go after each and every problem, each and every trouble, we will never finish in 2 or 10 years. We have to change. We have to have
The
a
Interior
democracy,
Ministry
a
is
real
not a
democracy in
problem.
Egypt.
It's the problem.
This real democracy will establish real state foundations, and that's what we need. But not we are going just to each
What
here
makes
and
you
there
believe
some
that?
symptoms. Yeah.
This is the point I want to ask. I just
Yeah,
want to pick up on
exactly,
this,
yeah.
which is this. Are we really now, are you guys, when you wake up every morning, are you focused on things like the Ministry of Interior, or you're thinking on, I want to get through these 6 months to have a very civilian democratic government to tackle these issues and many more in a legitimate process? What's more important to you? Fix the Ministry of Interior today, put us on the right track democratically?
We have to take responsibility. I'm sorry, but I think that this thing of, everything we have a problem with going out and attacking it and protesting, I don't think that's effective. And I think we need to organize ourselves. You say, what would you have liked to see happen? I would have liked to see the people who, the so-called liberals, the people who were in Tahrir, organize themselves, come together, make compromises to form some organized coalition, and begin to move forward, which I don't think that we're doing.
Is there a little bit of a revolution fatigue that's setting in Egypt? I mean, I can't even keep track anymore with the number of demands of protests that are coming every Friday. I go down to Tahrir, there's always a group, somebody sets up speakers and is protesting. Is there a little bit of revolution fatigue that could threaten to stall the rate of progress?
Well, definitely there's a momentum. A revolution has a momentum, and over time this momentum will decrease. But at the same time, we have to guarantee that all the institutions are free and independent, starting from the media and the judiciary, and especially the judiciary. And these processes are very important for such momentum to continue and not to lose pace. And in reality, many of the protests and many of the platforms that are being built in Tahrir are a very pragmatic way of saying that we have a voice and we want to broadcast it. And if this voice actually goes to the mainstream media and to the terrestrial channels, we will have far more, I mean, this momentum will carry lots of improvements and will probably pay off better.
Mahmoud, are you happy with the way the media has been covering the revolution and the process afterwards? Locally,
really.
internationally?
Not really. Well, internationally, honestly speaking, I don't really care that much about the international focus. I think what's happening in Syria and Libya is much more worse. Yani. But locally, you're facing the big problem in terms of newspapers. Newspapers were created either in opposition of the regime or as intermediary between us and the regime. And now the newspapers, after the fall of Mubarak, whatever, don't know what to do. The opposition newspapers are like taking on the soap opera of like Mubarak is ill and Suzanne is behind everything and Gamal Ala punch each other, which everybody's eating up. Like I see interviews with like the driver and whatever, and it's very stupid. And the intermediaries don't know how to act, and most of the time they're acting as if SCAF is the new Mubarak.
Most of you
so
guys are
naturally they're very bad. Yeah.
Most of you guys, as we were saying, young Egyptians, slightly on the activist side of things. How much do you rely on traditional media, conventional media, newspapers, radio, state television for your information?
Unfortunately, so far, we haven't seen a new media arising after the revolution. The problem is all the mainstream media now, they belong to the previous stage, the Mubarak stage. So we really need new independent media that represents the spirit of the revolution and that represents us.
I agree with her that we don't have such a constructive.
That there seem to be, at least on TV, there seem to be this focus. I'm trying, like, I don't know if it's the rules of TV, they want people who are photogenic enough or something. But it's been a fact that, like, the families of like the martyrs have time and time again tried to get on TV, talk about the fact that there are no military trials for their people, and they're completely ignored. I mean, they're very big on getting people from Cairo, they're very big on getting people from Alexandria, but like very few do you see them actually sitting down people from Suez and asking what's happening in Suez, or Mansour asking what's happening in Mansour. This Cairo-centric focus is a disease that will eat Cairo alive because the rest of the country is sick and tired of this.
Well, one of the big questions that is now facing Egyptians is the timeline about elections and whether we should have a constitution first. Do you think Egypt should draft a constitution before they have elections, or should they have elections first?
Absolutely, I believe that elections should come first, and then a new constitution should be drafted after a democratically elected government and democratically elected parliament. I believe this would be more in line with democracy to draft a constitution after elections.
But how are you going to have elections when you don't know the laws that are going to govern that future election? I mean, tell me, what do you think?
You see, as someone with...
Do you agree with what she just said or no?
I have a kind of a strange opinion on that, but the only opinion that I'm going to give, like for me as someone with a law background, all I'm going to say is that before declaring that you're going to take part in elections so soon, you need to have a detailed, specific law that we as the people of Egypt have taken a part in its formation, a law that we can guarantee will provide us with free and fair elections.
Tell me, what do you think, constitution first or elections?
I'm not sure it makes any difference.
Why not?
Because first of all, you're faced with the same problem. Who is qualified to write the constitution? When I first started talking about the idea of a Bill of Rights, it was simply, we're going to get the International Bill of Rights, we're going to try to secure that, and that's it. But even then you face the issue of how do you secure that? How do you give that legitimacy? Who is qualified to write the constitution? Constitutional law professors, masalan, are they the ones that you should get? They wrote the referendum amendments, masalan. Should we get sociologists? Should we get scientists? Who should like religious clerics should have part in the constitution? The moment you start going that direction, you have a problem. At the same time, you're not really sure if you do the parliamentary election, if the people who are going to be in the parliament will be able to make a better educated decision regarding who writes the constitution. I think it's...
Who do you think should write the constitution? Well, I mean, he just really raised a very good point. Who represents the people?
No. You can engage the people in a process in which the millions voice their opinion on this process. And then, of course, you'll need elected representatives to coalesce this into a single document.
I think we should have elections first because technically, it's impossible to have constitution first, technically and democratically as well. So technically, you have just two options, either by democratic elections to choose some people to write the constitution, which is almost technically impossible to have people to agree about 100, 120 people, or you appoint some people which is extremely not democratic. So in that case, the technical way of getting elections first is the only way, in my opinion.
Let's talk a little bit about how a future Egypt should look like. Presidential parliamentary system, what do you think?
I think in the transitional phase, a presidential system would be suitable simply because a political culture does not develop or immediately switch overnight. So I think the final goal should be a parliamentary system because it is a lot more proportionally representative. However, in the upcoming phase, it should be a presidential system to get us through this with the final goal of being a parliamentary system.
I think we should go with a presidential system, but with obviously way more limited powers. I think there are two very solid reasons for this. One is control the military. The military is not going to obey any government that doesn't have massive mandate. So a presidential system where the president has at least, the executive has at least 50%, of the voters backing them is required for the military to obey orders. Also, parliamentary systems are usually run by coalitions that happen after people vote. So they are governments made of chunks and minorities, and the policy is set after people vote, not, so they actually give less agency. They give more agency to parties, but less agency to voters.
Can Egypt have free and fair elections in 6 months? I mean, we're now several months into it. Can it have free and fair elections by September?
It's very difficult to have a fair and free elections by September. That's what
But I'm talking strictly mechanically. Like, can they hold elections where there's observers? Would you want to see foreign observers in Egypt?
Yeah, I would.
You would?
Yeah, I would.
Does everyone agree with that?
I don't believe that we have the capacity.
It's going to be very fair.
But a lot of people say that that's a violation of Egypt's sovereignty.
No. According to international law, international supervision over elections, this is a widely accepted thing. Every single country, including Western countries, allow for foreign.
It's no longer controversial. It was the message of the NDP back then that that having international observers is some way decreases the state's role and the sovereignty and things like that.
Thank you very much. We're going to take a short break and then we'll pick it up after the break with this very lively discussion we have going on here at the cafe. Welcome back to the cafe. So I want to ask you by picking up where we left off, revolution fatigue. Has it set in? Is the country tired of all these revolutionary demands?
Shouldn't, because we haven't achieved any demands yet. There is a problem that people are criticizing the certain groups' protests, or they call it fa'awiyya, certain groups' rights and demands. But by criticizing, they said it's not the time yet, we should wait. But we shouldn't forget that the main demands of the revolution were bread, freedom, dignity, and social justice. So I think that these people do understand the concept of revolution more than we do, because they are waiting for their basic rights, for their freedom, for their food, for the social justice. And it's not happening.
So everyone has a right now to protest about whatever they want.
Everyone
Labor
has the
movements,
right to
teachers, unions, whatever they want.
Every single person should have that right.
Yeah, and this is the time for it.
It's a fundamental right. And before the revolution, we shouldn't forget that before the revolution, we used to criticize the regime that whatever protest there is, they just send the police. So the doctors are not happy, send the police. The farmers are not happy, send the police. The workers having problems, just send the police. And we're doing, our government at the moment is doing the same thing.
Okay,
we're not treating people as citizens.
It's a problem of cosmetic change. In reality, everything that they're doing is cosmetic. Oh, you want a different Minister of Interior, is different Minister of Interior. The real problems are down. They're like socioeconomic. They're like, in reality, You know, if what we're doing, or at least peacefully demanding those demands, are ignored, you know, the reality is those demands are not going to go away. It's not like it's wishful thinking. Eventually, the peaceful part of the revolution will end. The people who wanted to make it peaceful, like, suddenly find themselves discredited and completely sidelined, and then you will face a more violent repercussions to what's happened.
The thing that we have to realize is that this is where the revolution is at. Like, revolution is not just changing who rules, but it's changing the whole social order. And they're not as fragmented as you think. Like, the demands are actually unified. They're all about decent wage, decent working conditions, and so on. There's very wide similarity between all these different protests. But also, more importantly, you were talking about, like, whether we should wait for work on elections and then solve these issues, but it doesn't work this way, because we don't have parties that have very strong popular bases and know what people want and have programs that make sense to large swathes of society. So these protests are actually not just directed at the interim government, they're also directed at the future government. Here is what your party platform should look like. Here is what your program should be. These are our demands, and for the transition to happen, it should be a kind of democracy that is going to deliver on these demands. And for us to vote for you, you have to be, responsive to these demands. There is an economic slowdown, obviously, but I think, like, considering that we are going through a social upheaval, I think it's very minimal.
I think this fatigue comes not from, let's agree that the revolution has not ended, okay? But this fatigue comes from being in the same stage for a while. People are tired and feeling tired of being at the same stage 5 months after. We have to move to the next step, to trying to build a state of foundation. So people are not fatigued of revolution, they are fatigued of specific stage of revolution which has not ended. I mean, we are repeating ourselves every day. I cannot see any difference.
That we are fragmented and we are disorganized, and there's a sense, what kept the 18 days going is there was focus. There was much more of an organization, and I don't think that we have that anymore.
One of the issues that you're talking about is unity. You come from a political family. I think the question maybe some of us are all wanting to ask about politics. You talked about political parties. There are now something like 46 political parties that are being formed or in the process of being formed, some expected to reach 100 by the September elections. Yeah. Are the political parties that are being formed now in Egypt, are they representative of what people want, or is it just anybody who wants to make a party making a party?
As you can see now, there are many parties arising. All the youth who want to have a hand in the political change, they go and establish a party, believing that this would be a way to participate in politics and to participate in political change. And I believe that the stage now is for action both on the political level and on the civil society level. I believe it's very healthy now to have these diverse political parties arising.
If I may interject, one thing that I've noticed about lots of the parties that are being established is that they're literally being established on the same theme of parties that were functioning before the revolution, in the sense of what's happening now. It's not actually the youth that are going out to establish these parties, it is businessmen with lots of money, and usually from older generations. I agree with you.
Do you guys agree with that? Do you think there are parties that are being formed?
I believe only a few parties are formed by businessmen and pro-Mubarak businessmen, but the majority of new parties are actually established by youth who participated in the revolution, like the
Muslim Brotherhood.
Party.
The Muslim Brotherhood is an established party. They created their party.
Yeah, it's a party that includes both elders and youth, and even some of the youth members of the Brotherhood are now actually establishing a separate political party with other.
But a lot of the a lot of the youth parties are directly backed by businessmen and so on. That is true.
Yeah, it's a healthy phenomenon to have 100 parties, and I think the number will level out somehow after the revolution or after the elections. This is not the question, but the question is, are these parties really representing the whole spectrum of Egyptian society or not? And if not, we have to, or anybody has to find or to form his own, but not to criticize the others. They have to work hard.
Quick survey. Has anyone here found a party that they are aligning themselves with? That they
I did, yeah. I think I'll go for Freedom and Justice.
The Muslim Brotherhood's party.
Probably Al-Ghad Liberal Party.
Well, probably the Popular Coalition, Half Shabi, which is a leftist party.
I think there are a couple of parties that I agree with several of their ideas, but not yet.
Not yet.
I mean, I'm a journalist and writer, so I will not sort of name a party, but I do see that there are parties that are sort of trying to address people's demands on a grassroots level, definitely.
No, not yet. I still have to wait. How are they going to apply their ideologies on the street?
Totally undecided تماما. No, you can see how different parties مثلا are starting to like become more prominent. Like some parties have managed to get their act together and move, and some parties haven't. And of course, getting their act together in this short period is really a very relative term, you know. But you're still waiting for, you know, a strong left party. You know, whether it's the Halaf al-Shabi, whether it's the Democratic Workers' Party, you're still waiting for that to happen. The equation is not balanced at the time right now. We have religious right, we have secular right, we have center-left kind of with Social Democrats Party, but there isn't a left or like radical left like party yet that has presence.
I want to ask you guys, who here is afraid of the Muslim Brotherhood Party and other Islamist parties or religious parties?
I'm not afraid at all.
Bring it on.
It's about fear.
No.
I think it's less about fear as it is about, is that the direction you want the country to go in? I mean, I'm constantly asked, are we moving in the right direction or in the wrong direction? And I feel inherent to the question of the wrong direction is the Muslim Brotherhood. Whereas when you really look at it, you know, the majority of the population, we are conservative. Islam is a core part of our daily lives. If we move in that direction, is it wrong? It's not what we want, but it's not wrong.
Look, I honestly feel that even if the Muslim Brotherhood come into power or an Islamist sect comes into power, we have crossed a new threshold. We're now in a new Egypt where if whoever comes into power in the upcoming phase does not fulfill the demands of the people, does not do their job properly, we're going to remove them. So we're past this whole dictator, it's choking the country for 30 years.
That's why I'm so surprised when they say that, oh, Muslim Brotherhood, when they come to power, they're going to be the majority like the previous National Democratic Party, but there's a big difference. What's in common between these? This is democracy, this is dictatorship, so if you believe in democracy, okay.
But I think
it's not about, democracy is not about just the rule of the majority of people. I mean, I personally don't want to wake up in the morning having our government saying that this is the rule of God. I mean, that would be this is my worst.
Are you afraid that religion is being evoked?
If they are saying that this is the rule of God, then khalas, there's no argument.
Mostly there is a problem here that, you know, most people are afraid of the Brotherhood, don't understand. Egyptian people in general are centrist. You know, so they're the kind of society that doesn't want to be secular but doesn't want religion removed. You know, it's a kind of society that has like girls go to the beach in the North Coast and then have Taraweeh sessions, you know, in Ramadan. It's the guy who prays 5 times a day and then at a Shabi wedding goes and drinks beer. You know, they definitely don't want religion removed from their lives. They don't want someone telling them what their religion is. And I don't think that the Brotherhood is stupid enough to try from the beginning to put any kind of religious edict of that kind, because everybody, even if they reach power, and I don't think they would ever reach power right now.
I would never underestimate the stupidity of any political faction in Egypt. But yeah, and I think that is the main problem, really. It isn't about whether I found a party or whether we are afraid of the Muslim Brotherhood or who's going to get majority. The revolution, the organized forces, you know, and the ideological political forces in Egypt were a very small part of the revolution. They are all, even the most popular one, like the Muslim Brotherhood, they are all completely disconnected from the vast majority of the people, of the mobilized people. So we have a very skewed political system. We'll have to pick, you know, candidates out of a set of choices that really goes way below our aspirations. Now, I think part of the problem is that we're stuck in these parties. The activists are trying to establish parties, whereas what we need right now is to go into elections. So you should be more focused on working locally, having candidates, having very localized platforms. And then we'll figure out parties later. We just need...
I also think, I think it's not the time to be afraid now. I think now it's the time to work towards the next stage. If you have a program, an ideology, or whatever plan that you have to reform the country and develop it, go to the streets, talk to the people. Have your own presence in the streets and try to reform the country by yourself rather than just fear-mongering against the Brotherhood or Salafis or whatever. I think this is a waste of time now. I think now we need to work.
It's not about reforming, it's not about the majority of a government and who's going to rule in the next elections or in the parliament. It's about the religious discourse taking a huge part of our daily lives. Right. What sheikhs and imams are doing in small corners and small mosques are more dangerous than what the leaders are doing. Sorry?
This has nothing to do with Can I recommend?
What do you propose to do about it?
Yeah, can I recommend?
We propose to have a neutral government at the moment. If religion is forming our lives,
The imam will continue no matter what kind of
you should
government.
have a rule of law against sectarian speech.
That's
So
their
how,
own job.
wait. How are you going to do? How are you
There's
going
an
to enforce that?
anti-discrimination
Yes.
law.
How are you going to enforce that? There
Apply
are
it.
millions of mosques in the
Yeah,
country.
apply
No,
the
please.
rule of law.
No,
How?
Mash, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Please, Mash, I'm sorry, okay? If the army is fully capable, okay, of drawing red lines with regards to criticisms on the army and being, no, Mash, please, 1 second,
But they
okay?
aren't.
No, with the majority of the population. If the Egyptian army has been capable of enforcing this de facto law of keeping people quiet with regards to criticizing, the people, I think they should
But they
use.
failed.
Wait, listen. We're talking about the majority of people. They should
No,
use.
the majority
They
of
should
people are
use this
critical of the
very
army.
power that they have, okay, to prevent religious
Yeah, so they
discrimination
should- so
or
they
the
should
use of
repress.
please let me
So they
finish
should repress.
or the use of religious
And then work on
discourse in
education and
politics. I
development.
think
So
it
they
could
should
happen
repress.
through enforcing
The
law.
only way you could prevent the religious discourse in politics is through repression.
No, you should stop hatred
Mash,
speech.
there's a difference between law and
How do you do that?
Okay, obviously, this is one of the more sensitive issues. You get a sense that this is religion and
revolution-
politics is a very sensitive issue here
This
in Egypt. But
revolution,
let
I
me
think,
just say
has
one.
proved something which is very important, that I think during the revolution it has proved that there is nothing in Egypt called sectarian sedition. There is nothing called racism. Actually, these are political terms. Political, not religious.
Wait,
It's political.
What happened in Tahrir?
Let's
wait,
political.
wait, guys, let's hear
It's
it. Go ahead,
political.
Maya,
What
go ahead.
happened in Tahrir? I do agree. But what happened in Tahrir was the honeymoon. Outside Tahrir,
Are there serious
No, I'm
sectarian
not-
tensions in Egypt?
Definitely, I've been
Okay,
working
what
on
are
this for
they?
There are
years.
But why did it
What are
arise
you
after the
observing?
revolution? Why was it not there hatred speech?
Wait, hold on.
There are
Yeah, but
tensions.
now the
Let's
problem
just
is,
give her a
yeah.
chance to answer. Go ahead.
There's hatred speech, and there's division in society, and people are doing this in their daily life. It starts with Sabah al Khair wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh till the most dangerous issues
that's
in the
right.
society.
So it's
about
permeated a little bit of the culture in the society,
yes,
is what you're
it's not
saying.
it's not about just violence, because violence is just the top of the iceberg. Underneath the violence, there's everything else that we should worry about, because it's deep in our culture
But it
and
cannot be
education.
policed. But it cannot be policed. You can't
Not
solve
police,
it by
apply the
regulation.
law and then
right.
work
You
on
are
development
right.
and
You are right.
education.
Okay,
This is
hold on.
political. This is
Hold on
political.
one second. One second. Nadia,
Spoilers. You
one
cannot
second. One
apply the
second.
law over speech.
As a Muslim woman, do you think that there is a discrimination against minorities in Egypt? A systematic discrimination?
Absolutely. During the Mubarak regime, I believe that Christians were discriminated against, just like all other Egyptians. You know, we were all living under repression, and Christians absolutely they didn't take the rights. And I believe that the only way for minorities to get the rights is to have a democracy and to have a rule of law.
The problem is not religious, it's legal, it's civil. It's
cultural.
actually, it's repression, it's dictatorship. It's not that you believe in something and I believe in something else. This is the dispute, this is religious, but that's not the truth. The truth is that you don't have your rights and so do I. I don't have my rights. If we both have our rights, it's
in
solved.
our culture.
You said the
It's not
problem
about-
was
it's
somewhat
not only about-
socioeconomic. What can be done to improve it? What are you seeing as the discrepancy? Why do you say it's socioeconomic?
Because I think, to bring up the Muslim Brotherhood again, when you look actually at their programs, at their outreach programs, they're reaching out and offering people on a grassroots level the services that the government has never offered. And so obviously on that level, those people, even if they're not religious, they will then support the Brotherhood, they will turn more towards religion. And I think it's actually at the grassroots level that this divide and this tension and this strife that's where it's stemming from.
And it's not only it's not only religious fundamentalism that comes as a result of economic strife, but it's fundamentalism in general. It does not only have to be religious. So I strongly agree that with the improvement of socioeconomic conditions, fundamentalism, whether religious, whether political, whether social fundamentalism, all of these things will start to improve with time, with the improvement of
I'm
social.
not sure there's
I'll go back to the point of hate speech. Hate speech, well, you can criminalize it and all this, but it will continue to exist. It will continue to be popular in certain with certain people, but the reality is that we need the society to be desensitized to it. Well, and this is actually happening. The more people talk about, the more people say hate speech in whether a mosque or a church or whether in any place, less and less people will react to it because it's certainly becoming, and people are seeing the corrosive effects that it has.
Is there anyone here who is skeptical that the conditions for minorities will get worse in a new and freer Egypt?
It can. I mean,
it can.
Yeah. Like democracy and even improving socioeconomic conditions does not guarantee. You've got racism on the rise in Europe. They've got some of the best living standards in the world. So I think like Tahrir held the key. I mean, we saw how within Tahrir all these differences could disappear. They don't exactly disappear. They're just like people found out that they are not the pushback. It's not as important as something else. So it's solidarity and a singular purpose that could, let us suppress these things to the point where they become less and less relevant.
But Ayman, logically
no
speaking,
guarantee.
the country will get more conservative on the short term. That's expected.
In the short run, everyone agree the country will be a little bit
I don't agree.
No, I personally believe it's going to get more conservative, not religious, but more conservative within the next from 1 to like 2 to 3 years. Because for the first time, if the elections actually are truly representative, you're going to have a system of morality, system of government that is supposed to represent a cross-section of like all Egyptian society with a different morality and moral codes that are inherent there. You're talking about whether it's Bedouins, whether it's Nubians, whether they're Upper Egyptians, whether they're people from the Delta. The discourse is not going to be set people in Cairo anymore. They're not going to be like, okay, this is how you're supposed to do Shafi, because you're going to be dealing with lots of traditions that those people value. So I believe that's going to happen.
I completely disagree. I think what we're seeing that is one of the biggest changes that have happened now is that the urban space is less controlled. Like the removal of the regime meant that we can use urban space more freely. So we're now seeing concerts in the streets and things like that. And it's bringing culture outside of traps, isolated
talking about social norms,
boxes is what changes. What makes, and there's another thing which is again about cross-class, that the urban poor are claiming back, are getting intermingled now in downtown and in the big squares and so on, where in the past they've been repressed and pushed back very violently by the police, and it's within the informal settlements and the slums and so on where society is the least conservative.
Is there a counter-revolution?
Absolutely. There are many attempts to have a counter-revolution after the revolution actually started, either by members of the previous regime or those who actually want to simply distort the image of the revolution. And this counter-revolution will still be there until there is stability or a real democratic regime.
Very quickly, 6 months from now, are we still having the same discussion about the future of Egypt? Are we optimistic or are we pessimistic?
I'm certainly optimistic, but we'll always have discussions over the future of Egypt, and I hope that we always have this discussion because that's actually the momentum of the revolution.
Yeah, I mean, I hope we'll have an elected government, but I think we'll continue the revolution and we'll be giving the elected government as much of a hard time as we're giving to the interim government.
Very optimistic.
Very optimistic.
If we can stick by the principles that we went down for this revolution for, if we stick by them and achieve justice, then I will be optimistic. But if we forget these principles, then...
So where are you, optimistic or pessimistic?
No, I'm optimistic.
Optimistic.
I'm happy that such discussions are possible. That was not possible before, but I do have my worries about the future.
So you're cautiously optimistic.
If we are in 6 months not accused of being spies, not in jail and not killed, I'll be very optimistic. I have to tell you.
Yeah, I am equally optimistic, but also we have to have our concerns and work in order to protect the gains of the revolution and the values of the revolution, as Ayman said. This is the main guard of our future.
I'm not so optimistic. I mean, I'm optimistic for dialogue and discussion, but I feel we're forgetting sort of the grassroots, lowest band of the population where, I think that was the backbone of the revolution. They're the ones who need to see changes in their lives, and I don't think they're going to be touched in 6 months.
Well, a special thanks to all of our guests, and thank you for joining us in the cafe. I'm Ayman Muhyiddin. Join us next week as we discuss Egypt's new role both in the world and in the region.
I think just the misinformation some people have about some parties. I mean, like if the Muslim Brotherhood will rule, they will have something called the rule of God, which does not exist. Even the Muslim Brotherhood has never said something like this, so it's misinformation.
Well, people mentioned the counter-revolution, and I guess the counter-revolution is actually inside every one of us. It's when we become reactionary, when we give up, and we give up hope and optimism.
Yeah, since the revolution, we have this sort of discussion like every day, talking about what's happening in Egypt and arguing, yelling at each other. So it's pretty much the same.
It was really enjoyable. I feel that we were all being quite polite because some of us have met outside of this and we've sort of become much more argumentative.
It was enjoyable. Sometimes I feel that it's difficult to go through so many subjects in such a short period of time, because especially when it comes to the revolution and all the different aspects of it, you need time to sit and talk out all the little details.
I think we needed to talk more, for example, about civil society or education, unemployment, but at the end you can't talk about all Egypt in just one episode.